between Italy and Norway, and this is looking to be a very hype match. What we are, of course, going to be doing is check out the standings to see where both of these countries currently lie, as this was one of the very nice groups that I did really look forward to going into this stage of the World Cup. We've got Spain first, and it looks like they're pretty much guaranteed that safety net going into and qualifying to the next stage, as Italy is a bit in the waters. It's not completely out of the way. Norway is competing and trying to go up against it, so it may seem to be that whichever team does win this match will be able to progress on to the next stage, unless of course there is a tie, which would mean that Italy advances due to a higher amount of differential in points.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a real nail biter if you're Norway. I mean, you've got to win 5 games out of 3, or 5 matches out of 3 against probably one of the best known countries for strong VGC players, great team builders, people within the community, and of course a real depth of player. You know, you tend to find there's way more Italian players that are really good at VGC than you have slots on a team to fill. So Italy always a strong contender in these sort of matches. Spain doing very well in this group, though. I have to give them a shout out for getting 2 wins already and securing their place in the next stage. But yeah, absolute nail biter coming out here between Italy and Norway going into this match.
Exactly that, and to just add that tiny bit of more pressure onto this match, we are going to be featuring great chainers from both sides of the field. But before that, of course, we're just going to be popping into seeing what the current scores are. As we can see, of course, no matches have been played, or should I say uploaded yet to the Discord server, which in turn does get passed on to the website. So nothing to pretty much see here other than the matchups. Very strong, experienced players from both sides. Of course, we do have to give that extra bit of shout out to Italy, being, of course, the Euro Cup champions of last year, and one of the potential favorites of trying to at least reach that end in sight section of this World Cup of Pokemon tournament. But Ben, we're going to go straight to the player profiles right now, and we are going to be starting off with our current European international champion, Mr. Flavio del Pidio, rocking the Lunala, Incineroar, Landorus Incarnate, Mimikyu, Amoonguss, and the Stakataka.
Yeah, Flavio holding the European International Championships for probably longer than anyone ever will. Because of the current situation, but yeah, almost a player that needs no introduction. But if you haven't been about for so long, he is probably one of the best players in Europe, certainly definitely one of the contenders for one of the better players in the world, and he's going to be one of Italy's strongest contenders for bringing home the win, or at least the draw for Italy here, as they only need 4 wins to qualify onto the next stage. A little bit of a trick room focus on his team and using Lunala, which is, again, you know, a little bit like in the last game, a little bit more of an outside pick. But that Shadow Shield does allow it to do a lot of work. And of course, paired with something like Mimikyu with that disguise ability and the natural bulk of Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Stakataka, it's going to be really difficult for Flavio's opponent to do significant damage in the early game. I think that's going to be significant going forward.
Oh, 100% agreed there, as we are going to be moving on to Flavio's opponent for today, which is going to be Brede, Stavø, good mate of mine as well, rocking the Zacian, Incineroar, Landorus Incarnate, Grimmsnarl, Gyarados, and the Amoonguss. So, Ben, this is a battle between managers of Italy and Norway, and it's looking to be a spicy one at that.
Yeah, it certainly is. Zacian pairs about neutrally, I think, into Lunala, although unfortunately there's a lot more speed control going on for Flavio with the ability to Trick Room and such than Brede has on his side of the field. Of course, that Grimmsnarl is going to play an important role, can launch out things like taunts to stop Pokemon in their tracks, and of course Fake Out, maybe rocking something like a Foul Play to do a bit of damage. But really going to be in this game how the Zacian gets into position to do damage to that Lunala and friends, and whether or not it can stay outside of Trick Room and in a point where it can attack first and take those knockouts before it takes too much damage.
Yeah, as we are going to be going straight into the action. This will, of course, have been recorded over on Flavio's side. We will be seeing it from his point of view. And so just talking a bit about the matchup, Ben, we notice, of course, that there is no psych terrain on Flavio's hard Trick Room mode, as that would have been some sort of issue for the Grimmsnarl if it does have any sort of disrupting kind of support moves from its side. But no, Prankster may come as a factor into this match, but I feel like Flavio has a lot of ways to set up Trick Room. That Lunala and Mimikyu having that additional bulk, thanks to their abilities, just really forces your opponent to try to focus down on one or the other. And to be honest, knowing Flavio, he might even bring them both as a lead.
Well, certainly, and one of the great things about Lunala as a Pokemon is that you don't necessarily have to hit Trick Room turn one. Its Shadow Shield ability makes it so bulky that maybe you can launch off what is now probably the most common set for Lunala to run, which is that Power Herb Meteor Beam, and you know, do things like knocking out an Incineroar, and then they're like, oh, now I've lost my Dark type, I can't do too much damage to this Lunala. The game doesn't go too well from there. Yeah. So you know, there is those options that Flavio has available to him. So it could be a little bit of a mix match here of whether the Trick Room comes, when it comes, and also how it comes between the three Pokemon that are going to be able to set up the Trick Room. But nothing going to be going on turn one on that front.
Yeah, let's get ready to battle, ladies and gents. We got Zacian and Gyarados coming out from Brede's side, whilst we do have the Incineroar and Landorus Incarnate over on Flavio's side.
Yeah, do you know what? It's hard to be professional when you've got these kind of jokes coming out, Costa. It's, you know, really good puns coming out on stream here for the final game. That Gyarados on the field launching out Intimidate onto Incineroar Incineroar and Landorus on Flavio's side of the field is going to be fairly significant here, but more important is that water coverage that Gyarados has access to. No Trick Room opportunities on Flavio's side of the field, so if that Gyarados was launching out something like a Taunt, would be able to maybe stop a Trick Room here, keep that Zacian in prime position. Other important thing to note is that Zacian isn't going to be able to knock out the Landorus this turn, and that looks like it's going to be going for a Protect instead, knowing that it's going to be under threat.
So the Fake Out goes into the Gyarados there, wants to try to stop it in its tracks completely, as we see a substitute being set up from this Landorus Incarnate. And of course, that Zacian did opt to go for the Protect there. It didn't want to get focused down by that Fake Out and Earth Power, which makes a lot of sense, but then you allowed a lot of room for that Landorus to get that sub up.
Indeed, and Landorus behind a sub is really not what any form of Zacian team does want to see. That Gyarados will be able to break the substitute, as will Zacian, but certainly Zacian doesn't want to take any damage while it's doing that. If it does have access to something like substitute, could maybe protect itself, but really does want to play defensively this turn in front of the Earth Power potential from Landorus.
Okay, so Amoonguss does switch in, and it will be on the receiving end of that Earth Power, which pretty much looks like it guarantees that 2-hit KO, able to bring it down just beneath its half HP range. We have Waterfall coming out from the Gyarados, will be targeting that Landorus and getting rid of that substitute, as the Incineroar, just doing what an Incineroar always does, goes for the parting shot, will be targeting down that slot, which was previously the Zacian, and allow Flavio a bit of more room for maneuverability in being able to bring in a new Pokemon of his choosing.
Yeah, indeed, and nice play there from Flavio. Capitalizing on the substitute from last turn, getting some damage on the field, and of course pivoting out to his own Amoonguss to maybe redirect some attacks from Gyarados. Of course, the Landorus on Flavio's side of the field is now under threat. I mean, it could go for the substitute again, but ultimately that Gyarados is going to be able to keep it under pressure, and we haven't seen what item that Gyarados is holding yet. So if it was something like a safety goggles, which could be viable with moves it has access to, like Taunt and Roar for Xerneas matchups and such, it could be that the Amoonguss on Flavio's side of the field now is really not going to be doing too much, but the Amoonguss on Brede's side of the field not wanting to take another Earth Power either. We saw that do more than half, and that's going to be really important for Flavio to capitalize on the damage that he did to that Amoonguss, because not many Pokemon on Brede's side of the field want switching into that Earth Power.
Yeah, exactly that. As the Incineroar is going to be switching in for that Gyarados, there's no way, chance or form that the Landorus would surely go for an Earth Power into that slot, into that Gyarados for that read, as we are going to be seeing the Amoonguss going for the Rage Powder. We want to make sure that this Landorus could not get hit by any sort of attack, water-type move coming from the Gyarados, and the Earth Power is more than enough to pick up the KO. So we've got our first Pokemon down and out for game 1, and Flavio is 4 versus 3 versus Brede.
Yeah, this is a really nice position for Flavio, but I'm just looking at the options available, and I'm not seeing too many really strong options that Brede has in his arsenal. The Landorus has taken some damage because of the substitute from the previous turn, which means that the Intimidate, if it comes in from Flavio's side of the field, wouldn't probably be able to protect the Landorus from being knocked out by a Behemoth Blade coming out from that Zacian. The trouble is that if both Amoonguss and Landorus have Protect, which is fairly likely, you can just double Protect on this Fake Out, maybe get a substitute of your own, but with that Amoonguss Rage Powdering away, it's going to be really difficult for Brede to get into a position where he can knock that Landorus out without having to put his Zacian at risk.
Yeah, as we do see, of course, that Incineroar being able to come in, maybe wanting to get utilized for that subsequent turn for the Fake Out pressure, as we have seen the Landorus go for the Protect. Zacian opts to go for that Behemoth Blade into the Incineroar. You see, of course, the Intimidate and the fact that it is resisting the Steel type move, not dealing as much damage onto that Incineroar. And talking about resists, we see yet another one. So very good switch out there for Flavio, being able to bring that Incineroar in, and now all of a sudden try to push the momentum back onto Brede's side of the field with that Fake Out pressure and potential KOs, because Landorus really likes seeing these kind of Pokemon against it, which are weak to its super effective ground type moves.
Yeah, exactly, and now it's like, okay, so Zacian's got an Intimidate on it, so has Incineroar, and now it's against two Pokemon in Incineroar and Landorus that are really capable of knocking out the Zacian, or at least giving it a good go. Incineroar switching out, I think, is a good move here for Brede, bringing in that Intimidate from the Gyarados and further lowering at least the Incineroar on Flavio's side of the field, but will it be enough?
Oh, as we do see that focus down from the Incineroar, trying to get that Fake Out onto that Zacian and that follow-up with the Earth Power. So Brede making a very smooth move here, being able to bring the Gyarados in, which now the momentum's been spun on its head, and it is threatening potential KOs on both the Landorus and the Incineroar with a Water-type move.
Yeah, it really will depend on how Flavio's trained his Landorus as to whether that Landorus is in KO range from a Behemoth Blade. Of course, will depend on how Brede has trained his Zacian too. But one thing that isn't really up for contention is whether or not that Waterfall will be enough to pick up the KO on either Incineroar or Landorus. So we'll have to see what this Gyarados targets this turn.
Yeah, as the Amoonguss is going to be switching in right now, Flavio wanting to recycle that Fake Out pressure for following subsequent turns, as the Behemoth Blade will be coming out from the Zacian, targets the Landorus, and the Landorus survives on 6 HP. This may have been EV'd from Flavio's side and retaliates with the one-hit KO onto the Zacian, absolutely knocking it out of this game too. And we have the follow-up of the Gyarados trying to go for the waterfall, but being met with a spongy little cute mushroom.
It's very spongy, very cute. Very frustrating for Brede in this game. He's managed to take a few hits, and yeah, that's really unfortunate for Brede. He played the positive move, I think, in that situation where you had to try to knock out the Landorus, and with only 6 HP remaining, it was really close. A combination of substitute chip from previous turns and the damage. Even a neutral Behemoth Blade still struggling to take the knockout on that Landorus. So, yeah, really unfortunate for Brede. Flavio playing it also confidently, getting the Earth Power knockout really big, and now it's really Flavio's to just keep cycling around and just waiting until he can get into a position to just launch out those powerful attacks from Landorus into Pokemon that can't protect like Incineroar.
That's exactly right. As the Landorus opts to go for that protect, it wants to try to slow down the pace. Gyarados nearly picking up the KO onto the Incineroar, but it will be proccing its berry right there. The citrus berry, in fact, recovering that 50 HP's worth, which could prove to be quite vital, as it will survive that double up right there, and it will be able to pressure once again with the fake out.
Well, indeed, but and this is the issue that Brede has, is that now the Incineroar has done what it's done on Brede's side of the field. It can't fake out now, can't stop the Landorus going for anything like an Earth Power, has the fake out option available on Flavio's side of the field, and using that to great effect on the Gyarados to secure that KO on the Incineroar on Brede's side of the field and take it down even further. And of course, there's still 2 Pokemon in the back there, I believe, for Flavio. So, yeah, it's going to be really tough for this Gyarados to pick up knockouts on everything.
Yeah, exactly that. And at this point, Flavio just needs to try to maybe try to just cement this win with a 4-0 win individual score in this game, as he opts to go for the protect with the Landorus. And the Amoonguss right now being on the field is not what the Gyarados wants. Of course, this does look like the game is pretty much over, I would say, because there's no way that the Gyarados can handle so many resources on Flavio's side, and opts to go for that forfeit.
Yeah, and I like the forfeit there. We didn't see a Rage Powder coming out at all in that game for Flavio. We just saw the switching between Amoonguss and Incineroar, and the Landorus really just doing everything in that match. Just being able to KO the Incineroar, Amoonguss, and Zacian was really quite incredible to see. So I like the forfeit there for Brede, especially if he is holding the safety goggles. Because if he is, then that's a great bit of information that he's holding back for the next game, and something that could be used against Flavio here. But going back to the drawing board, I mean, it's going to be really difficult for Brede now. He knows how much damage the Landorus can take from Zacian's Behemoth Blades, or at least he's got a good idea, and needs to be below substitute health, which means that a combination of Waterfall to break the substitute, or Behemoth Blade followed by Waterfall, is probably the only way that Landorus is going to be going down quickly. Quite like to see maybe a little bit of adjustment, bringing that Grimmsnarl potentially to get some light screens going. Could be another option for him, just to reduce that damage from the Landorus, because you just can't keep the Landorus doing what it did in that last game and really just earth powering everything except for the Gyarados until the team was no longer on the field.
Well, exactly that. I do feel like Brede does need to have some sort of disruption on his side of the field so he can try to gain that tiny bit of momentum going. But my lord, he's just going to go ahead and lead with the Incineroar and Landorus of his own, whilst Flavio opts to go for the Incineroar too, but the Lunala with a potential threat of getting the Trick Room set up.
Yeah, but the other threat that it's got going for it is that Meteor Beam as well. If I was Incineroar on Brede's side of the field, I'd be shaking in my boots right now. That's not an attack that any Incineroar wants to take, especially with that special attack boost that you get before the Power Herb activates. So, a little bit of a mixed bag this turn. Landorus not being on the field for Flavio, though, is a big adjustment. Maybe wanting to utilize that Lunala a little bit more to go for a Trick Room, but given how well the Landorus did in the last game, I'd be surprised if that was the route of choice. If you knock out either the Incineroar or the Gyarados on Brede's side of the field, you're in a great position for Landorus to just keep doing what it does without fear of fake out or waterfalls coming out. We see that Incineroar is indeed scared, shaking in its boots, and coming back in for the Amoonguss this turn.
Yeah, so this does mean, of course, if there's... Oh, wait, before that, there's a Rock Slide coming now. Will deal some good chip damage there. Breaks the Shadow Shield, most importantly. And yes, the Meteor Beam is going to be coming out from this Lunala. So if it targets down the Landorus, this will be a really good play from Flavio. But it will still be dealing a good chunk of damage, even if it does target down the Amoonguss, which was previously that Incineroar, which it does. And wow, deals a lot of damage. Basically guaranteeing to it KO, and most crucially, that +1 on the special attack for Lunala is just really, really good right now, and it kind of sets the field for you, that the fact that you can just thread in with so much damage output. You just need to be able to reposition your current state of board.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the challenges that you have when you play something like Meteor Beam is it's only the first one that takes one turn. Now it's going to be a little bit difficult for Flavio to use Meteor Beam on Incineroar, as it's likely to switch in here as it does. But that Moongeist Beam is boosted, and that's really important because you've got a Landorus which has just come in for Flavio that's going to deal with that Incineroar no problemo. And it's now going to be that Lunala is going to be able to just attack into any particular Pokemon that it wants to.
Ooh, and we saw the interaction of the Earth Power trying to target down the Incineroar, but being met just with ground, and no Incineroar, just the Landorus. We see the Moongeist Beam dealing very good chip damage there. You wouldn't even say that's chip damage because that's so much dealing onto Incineroar, which is resisted. Of course, it would have guaranteed a KO onto the Amoonguss, but I agree with Brede's play there, being able to switch out the Amoonguss, get a bit of regenerator action going, and recover a bit of HP for the Amoonguss.
Yeah, definitely. And now that Incineroar no longer worried about a Meteor Beam coming out, certainly not this turn at least. So if it does carry any dark moves, it will be able to launch them into the Lunala. But first it has to get through the Landorus on Flavio's side of the field. And unfortunately, one of the caveats to playing Landorus is that when you play Rock Slide, unfortunately you can't flinch anymore. But a move that can flinch is that Fake Out going into that Landorus, stopping it from moving this turn.
But the Earth Power isn't enough to pick up any sort of KO onto the Lunala, which does surprisingly have good-ish bulk. And the Landorus, though, on the other hand, does not, and gets absolutely knocked out of this game 2 from that Moongeist Beam. And it's like we were saying just now, Ben, the fact that the Lunala is at +1 of its special attack means it could just thread in all of Brede's Pokemon, unless you do have, I don't know, a Zacian, which is able to outspeed, and you're able to play out this turn correctly.
Yeah, well, the thing about this turn is that the Landorus is not in KO range of the Zacian Behemoth Blade if the Incineroar comes in. To do that, you have to sacrifice your boost, and so you've got to decide on if you're Flavio, which Pokemon that Brede really wants to target down. Does he care more about that Lunala with the +1 special attack boost, or that Landorus that did so much damage here? And clearly Landorus is the Pokemon that Brede wants to be protecting, and Lunala switches out for that Incineroar.
I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Flavio's probably going to opt to go for that slow play, go for the protect like you mentioned, have the fake out pressure for the following turn, and oh, that is not a protect that you want to see from Brede's side of the field. But then again, oh no, it's definitely not, as the Incineroar just absolutely gets wiped and is also out of this game too. So Brede really needs to try to bring this one back, and that protect was so crucial because he kind of burnt it in that scenario where he really should have been able to try to keep it.
Yeah, and this is the sort of really nice dual purpose of the play. Bring Incineroar in and make sure that Landorus lives the Behemoth Blade, also get the fake out in, and if the Zacian goes for the protect as it did, Well, you can always just fake it out. That's exactly what Incineroar's going on to, but onto the Amoonguss to stop any potential Rage Powder, and there's the Earth Power going into the Zacian, picking up the clean knockout there. Looks like it's going to be a 2-0 victory for Flavio and to Italy, taking their first steps towards winning this match and taking the second place slot in the group and leaving the group stage onto the next stage of the tournament.
Mamma mia, as my friends in Italy would say there, because it was all about positioning. The Landorus was the key there for Flavio, and unfortunately, Brede wasn't ready for it. Once again, blame chat for the puns, not me. Thank you very much. But yes, of course, it was just it was tough. It was very tough for Brede there, wasn't it? Because he just needed to try to manage his board as best as possible, but Flavio kept the pressure on every single turn. He had an opportunity and moment to try to either get fake out on the field with Intimidate or try to rotate if possible. He did, and he did it very, very well there. The Lunala was essentially unchecked. It was just left to go and deal so much pressure, threaten the KO onto the Incineroar in turn 1 of game 2 there. So Brede was already on the back foot, unfortunately, and it was just able to exert so much pressure. He didn't even need to get Trick Room up over on Flavio's side.
But and this is the thing, is that, you know, without the pressure on your side of the field to take out that Landorus, if the Zacian was just that bit more powerful, maybe it would have been a different game, and that would have been able to have the Zacian, or see the Zacian knock out the Landorus. Once the Landorus is knocked out, the Incineroar is a bit more free for the Lunala. Then there's not so much Trick Room shenanigans possible. Meteor Beam can be used up if you pivot correctly, or even play into protects and things like that. So it's, there were some of the tools available there for Brede, but it wasn't quite enough, and Flavio definitely just had just that edge in all of the interactions there, between the speed of fake out and the Amoonguss coming in and out, and the item choices, the power of that Landorus, that Brede wasn't really ready for. And I'm going to avoid the puns there, Costa. I'm managing it. But well played to both players. I mean, it's a great start to their week. There's still 7 more matches to go between Italy and Norway, so definitely not an indicator of how all of the rest of the matches go. So we'll have to see how that turns out over the next few days. But we are going to go to a in fact, not go to a break now. No, a very long break until tomorrow, where we're going to be featuring some more matches from this week. But for now, you've been watching the Victory Road World Cup, hosted by Victory Road, of course, and sponsored by Elgato. We're going to call it there for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow, exactly the same time, 6 p.m. UTC, and
no, not the same time, Mr. Ben. No, we're going to be here 4 p.m. UTC, 4 p.m. I believe, but the same time for the weekends. The weekends stay the same time as well. So please do not go anywhere, or should I say go and sleep, get some rest, get prepped for tomorrow's stream, as you are promised to have some very, very exciting matches on your screen. But of course, like Ben was saying, thank you so much for joining us, and we are looking forward to casting for you tomorrow as well for some awesome, very hyped up matches.